Hello, welcome to Enlightning. Thank you so much for being here. Today we're going to talk about Headlamp, and we have Joaquim here to teach us. Joaquim, will you tell us about yourself, please?
Hi, nice to be here. I'm a I'm an engineering manager at Microsoft and long time open source developer, I guess.
What do you mean you guess? Is there you should know better than anyone.
Then for sure.
Welcome so much. Thank you for being here to share your time and your expertise with us. Also, thanks to those who are already in the chat. Epic Tralala, you're here again today. Thank you so much for coming, friends. And if you're here, please do say hi and where you're visiting from. One thing I love about this community is that it's global. Where are you visiting from right now, Joaquim?
Well, I am based in Portugal, in southern Portugal, from a place called Lagos, and that's where I'm based. That's where I'm calling from.
Nice.
It's warm in here.
And I'm in Austin, Texas. I have the air conditioning cranked, so it's not so hot here, but outside it is. So a conversation from Texas and Portugal and from wherever you are. How cool is that? So we're going to talk about Headlamp. I love to go into these conversations completely blind. So I know almost nothing about Headlamp. I know that it's a UI that's related to Kubernetes somehow. Is that
Yeah.
But before we dig into what Headlamp itself is, what I want to talk about is what was the world like that caused Headlamp to be created? What problem is it solving?
Right. So the story starts in 2019,
Uh-huh.
second half of it, I guess. And so I was working at this small company in Berlin called Kinfolk. This was a small cloud native consultancy firm, and we were looking for a Kubernetes UI on which to show the capabilities of a Kubernetes flavor that the company was working on. So,
Okay.
basically, we were looking for UI. The company was very aligned with open source, so we looked it out there, what was available, and we found out that yes, we could take some of the available projects, but that we could classify them, right? Some of them were like, okay, they are desktop only, or they are web only, so you can run in clusters. Some of them required that you run them with certain capabilities or certain, I guess, credentials in the cluster. Besides all the tech stack and all that, and one important thing was that those projects, we would have to fork them, and that's okay. But we would like, I've had some experience in keeping forks of software, and that's sometimes a lot of work. And we were trying to avoid that. So how can we do that with still using the same base, but not having to keep all our changes together with the base project? And so the idea of an extensible UI, was came from that need, and that's why
So
we decided to work on it.
so UIs for Kubernetes that existed were niche. Is that what you're telling me? They
What?
were niche, like they
Yeah,
they
yeah,
only
yeah.
served one purpose.
Uh,
And that was
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I don't want to like make it sound like those solutions were not good enough or were only for specific niches or all that. The thing is that I guess we were trying to at the time already, like, chat solutions that we use every day are were very common, of course. And we were like, okay, some people use them in their as a desktop application. Other people didn't care about that. They just open a browser tab with them. We wanted that flexibility, right? And at the time,
Uh-huh.
we found out that yes, there were some solutions already available, but none of them had this thing where we could just grab it, extend it, and or run it as a desktop app, but also run it as a web. So there were all these checkboxes that we couldn't check.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about how to capture that on the board. They weren't quite single purpose, but they, if you, for your particular use case, you would need to cobble together lots of different UIs to get all the functionality that you were looking for. So UIs for Kubernetes didn't weren't all encompassing and didn't integrate well with each other, or were cumbersome to integrate with each other.
Was not so the case was not so much that they were supposed, or we were supposed to integrate them with each other. The thing was that they were focused on their own thing, of course, as legitimate as that is. But like I said, they were somewhat, and I hate to say the word because again, I don't want to. This is not about bashing any other solutions, right?
Yeah.
But we found out that there were some limitations, right, or at least in the design of how they were supposed to work. So like I said, some of them were desktop only. So what happens if you want to deploy a service with that UI? You cannot deploy a service with that UI. Some of them were the opposite, so it's web only. But what happens if you don't really want to expose the service on the web or run a server locally? You just want to use a desktop app. So these are two divisions, and then of course on top of that there were many other little things that we found. One of them, like I said, was the accessibility. So if I want to get a project out there and say, okay, I don't want to call it this name or use that logo, and I want to have it I want to have it, like, for example, not showing the the configuration resources from a cluster at all. Just want to show the pods. That's it. And I don't want to make it. I don't want the pods to be editable. So nobody in my org can edit pods directly.
Okay.
So I don't want that to show any edit commands, right? Doing this required like changing the source code, modifying the project, keeping the patches, up to date with upstream, contributing upstream, which is completely fine. We thought, okay, what if maybe it's not, if we are having this need, it would be nice to have a system where we can just load a little bits of code that modify certain things. Maybe they're smaller, maybe they're bigger in what they do, but if we could avoid modifying the base project, or keep that base project modifications to a minimum, then it would be much, it would be just easier to maintain the solutions. And anything that we have to touch, of course, in the base project would also be contributed back. So it's still an open source and very pure open source model. But that's the idea of having plugins, for example, for extending the base UI game. So we decided, okay, there's nothing out there that we can quickly grab. Let's make one.
Okay. So I think we got some foreshadowing there about what's to come in the episode, which I love. But what I've come down to is the crux of the problem right now is that UIs for Kubernetes before Headlamp in 2019, UIs for Kubernetes were focused and they were difficult to customize. Does that feel accurate?
Yes. Of course, all of that to a more or less degree. Like I said, I'm talking about our solution. I'm sure that other solutions will have their own way to defend what they're doing, or they were also extensible or something. But like I said, this combination of factors that we think will be something that is desirable for many vendors or users out there, that was not the case at the time.
Okay. Yeah, so this is 2019. Maybe other solutions have been made. I appreciate your diplomacy and not knocking other projects, but it is important to understand where we're coming from.
Yeah.
And then I have another question, and maybe this will get answered over the course of the episode, or maybe it's something to address now, and I'd like you to be the judge. But that question is, what makes a UI for Kubernetes? Like, I mean, what are we capturing exactly? Like I've been learning a lot about observability and all the different signals, and then should we go over, like, should we define what a UI for Kubernetes is before moving forward? Okay.
Yeah, and that's also I think a good question, because even in that category there is like many answers, and we have the one that applies to Headlamp. So a UI for Kubernetes, of course, can mean many things. The most famous user interface for Kubernetes is the CLI, is the command line interface, and that's the kubectl or kubectl or whatever people want to call it, right? So that's the most widely used interface into the cluster, as far as I understand. And then I guess I would perhaps do like two big categories: generic UIs and application specific or application focused UIs. Right? Yeah, I want to be able to give you time to to write that down.
Oh yeah.
So generic UIs and application specific or application focused, maybe it's a better.
Okay, application focused. I'm going to write that a little bit after we talk about what we mean by generic UI.
Yeah. So generic UI, the way that I understand it, is a UI that basically shows the most generic things that you expect from in Kubernetes clusters. What does this mean? It's a UI that operates a little bit like kubectl. So it allows you to list the resources, see the details of resources, and manage the resources. This is what I understand by generic UI.
So is it like cluster level stuff instead of application specific stuff?
Yes. You can think of it that way. So it's cluster focused, I guess.
Okay, I like that. Shows cluster focused, and then is it correct to say metrics here, or are we information?
I wouldn't call metrics, because that's information, I guess, or resources.
Okay. And then you said some examples, I think. What were those examples?
Yeah. So examples would be listing resources. So again, these are Kubernetes resources, cluster resources.
Okay.
It would be just getting the details of those resources. So describing those resources. That's the lingo that's in kubectl. And then management, because I guess I guess that would be like editing or applying, or I guess also getting the logs, but that's like listing information.
So actually, from the dashboard, you're able to take action on resources.
Yeah, that's another division in the UI world, I guess. And I think I'm gonna touch in a few minutes, I guess we can touch around that. There's another thing, sorry, about the generic UI that maybe is important, which is of course at the time, like I said, this company Kinvolk had its own Kubernetes flavor, and of course our idea was like, we want to have something that shows something specific to this cluster, but of course the base that we are going to work on, which is Headlamp, that's supposed to be generic in the sense that it's not tied to any flavor of Kubernetes. So if you connect to a cluster that is running on AKS, then it should be fine. You should be doing the same thing with the API, right? If you connect to one that is running on GKE or EKS, that should be the same. So it should work no matter what flavor of Kubernetes you have.
Is that true with generic only, or with generic and application focus?
No, I would say that's generic in the sense that it's not like a cluster brand specific or cluster flavor specific. So it's like cluster or cluster flavor agnostic, I guess, cloud agnostic.
let's cluster flavor agnostic. I like
Sure.
the, and by that we mean like you're using a managed Kubernetes, and whoever it's managed by, it doesn't care.
Right.
I said one singular Kubernetes by accident, like Kubernetes. Great.
Yeah.
Cool. So now we have application-focused UI.
So
How's that different?
Yeah, application-focused UI, I would say it's different just in the sense that, maybe what you want to show is not really the pods and all these Kubernetes specific things, but you actually want to show, okay, what applications are running in the cluster. Maybe you're running WordPress, so that's what you want to show. And maybe only after that you go into the details of what pods are actually powering that application. That's one case.
Okay.
The other case, I guess, could be like you have a UI that focuses just on your own application that is running in the cluster. So if you have I don't know, if you have your own way of deploying certain things in the cluster, maybe through a custom resource, maybe you have a specific UI for that. So that would be that would fall in the category of application focused UI.
So you might have an application-focused UI that shows many applications and how they interact with each other, or you might have one that's focused on a specific application.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. How am I doing on space in here? Okay. Or the UI. One thing, so to give you context of where I'm at is last month, I think I knew almost nothing about observability, and now I'm doing a series of Enlightning episodes about observability projects. So I'm learning it all at once. And so what I am learning is like observability happens at so many levels and so many places. And so it makes sense to me that then dashboards would also happen in so many places, because you might be specific in an application, interested in application behavior. You might be interested in the Kubernetes level. You might be interested in the infrastructure level, like what your nodes are doing. So this adds up for me on.
Yeah, and maybe we don't have to go there in depth, but I guess observability is not a different category, but it's a different, it allows UIs to show information that, are probably a mix between those two categories. So you can have observability on top of generic UIs, I guess, and maybe you have observability or an application-focused UI that what its role is to show you observability of a cluster, but using a specific observability project behind. And we have our own thing about that too, but maybe we focus on the basics for now.
We'll get the basics and then we'll dig in on that. Yeah, because how is it getting this information regardless of the UI? But I think we have enough context maybe to get into now Headlamp specifically. What is Headlamp? Do you think so? Okay.
Yes.
So a good old-fashioned Headlamp is fill in the blank.
Yeah. Headlamp is a UI for Kubernetes that tries to give you the best user experience, but it's built on top of a shared and extensible platform. And this sounds very salesy, I know, but this would be like a quick summary.
Okay. Well,
I wrote that in a note before we started the video, so I wouldn't, stutter when I had to give you a quick definition in full pleasure.
Okay.
Disclosure.
Well, you've been so diplomatic, and even though you don't say this is the best, I appreciate that you use the best. Like it tries for the best, which I appreciate. Try to do the best experience, right?
The best user experience, yeah, or UX.
And builds on top of, right?
And built on top of a shared and extensible platform.
Okay. So let's talk about what all of this means. Headlamp is a UI for Kubernetes that tries to give you the best user experience and builds on top of a shared and extensible platform.
I can hear some colleagues in my head now saying, "Why did you say tries? Why didn't you say gives?" But that's why I'm. Okay, so
when you
yes,
introduced yourself, you said, "I guess," about your own self. So this is totally on brand.
I'm shy with stuff like this. Yeah. So
I'm listening.
yeah, right. So I guess if somebody reads this definition, would be like, all right, so build on top of a shared and extensible platform. I already mentioned that the idea was for a project to be extensible, but now I say shared and extensible platform. Isn't that platform Headlamp? And
I did wonder about that. What's the platform? Yeah.
Yeah. So just to make this very, very clear, because sometimes we do refer to these names, although most times, maybe 95% of the times, I just say Headlamp. So we have internally, and also, it's I say internally, but it's like it's just something that we use to differentiate. We have Headlamp base and Headlamp. What does this mean? Headlamp base is basically the project. All right, so it's a generic UI for Kubernetes that is extensible. And this one Headlamp base, the idea is that there is no, it doesn't ship or it doesn't use any plugins. I guess that would be Headlamp base, not
BASE. Headlamp.
Okay, I see now what you do. Cool.
Okay, Headlamp base.
Yeah,
doesn't use any plugins.
Yeah, so Headlamp base is the base platform, sorry, and that's everything that is core. So basically, it's like if we're talking about in terms of UI, you're gonna see again what you expect from a generic UI, which is you can list the resources, you can describe the resources, you can get the logs, you can exec into pods if you have the capability. All of that is part of the base. Yeah, get list resources.
Exec into pods.
Exec, see logs, all that stuff.
Okay. Etc. Got it.
Right, and then we have and that's the base. So there's nothing in there that we and this is why we call it base. There's nothing in there that says, okay, you have to install Prometheus for this to work, or you have to install the metric server for this to work, right? And then we have Headlamp. It's and Headlamp is the project that we built on top of Headlamp base, but we ship it with a couple of plugins, right? So it's basically base plus the 2 plugins at the moment, and that's the app catalog. We call it app catalog, but that's a Helm chart catalog. We wanted to keep things generic, and I can get to why in a moment.
Okay. App catalog.
App catalog. So that you can also, for instance, that with Helm charts.
Reference that with Helm charts. Is that what you said?
You can put a parenthesis. The app catalog just means Helm charts, basically.
Okay. Gives you. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And the second thing?
Yeah, the second thing is the Prometheus plugin. So this gives you, as you expect, gives you information that is powered by Prometheus. So so you see the events over time, metrics over time. Right. So these are the ones that we ship, and the idea here, I don't think the exact plugins are so important. The important here is the concept, and the concept is that we, in Headlamp, like I said, we want to give you the best UX that we can, or that we think is the best. And for that, we sometimes need to use other projects that is not just given out of the box by Kubernetes, right? So out of the box, you can list pods, for example, and you can see the resources that the pods are using. But of course, if you have Prometheus, you can see that information over time. So if you want to check, for example, CPU usage, over time, of course, this is what this plugin does. But the idea again is that the concept is we have something without any plugins, because we know that some people out there maybe want to use it without any projects or anything installed in the cluster, and then we have plugins that we do to top that with extra information, and that's the case of the Helm charts, for example, and that's the case of Prometheus. Both.
Just like a classic dilemma in the world where some people want full control, and in that case they have Headlamp base. Some people want it to be as easy as possible, but that means accepting some opinions, and for them there's Headlamp proper.
I wouldn't say it's a matter of full control. Again, we're talking about from the user's perspective. That would be, or I guess from a user or a developer perspective, would be like, okay, if I use Headlamp, this is what they're giving to me. There's going to be Helm charts, there's going to be Prometheus. But now if I want to build something on top of this, I can, of course, use those plugins, or maybe I want to build something completely different, and I don't want any of that. I don't want people to have to install Prometheus. So if that's the case, I don't even ship the Prometheus plugin. I just want to ship the base plus whatever I'm doing here, very particular to my use case. One thing that is important, I think, to refer is that when people talk about, okay, there's a base project that is open source, and there's another project on top of it. So is this an open core kind of model? And that's entirely not the case, right? So both concepts are fully open source, right? It's just that one is like, okay, we're opinionated about what we want to show you, and the base is like, if you want something that is not opinionated, you have the base. That's all it is.
Okay. I think you just had nicer words for saying people want control. I still think it comes down to wanting full control, but I hear you.
No, it's not. I don't think it's a matter of control, because I guess it would be a matter of what you want to show, and or not even flexibility to be. So you can think of it as, I guess, even in terms of Linux distros, right? Sometimes you have distros that give you the very basic thing, and because you want to install a server and you don't need the UI, right?
Because you want full control.
Okay,
I think we're arguing.
In my mind, control means something different. But yeah, but sometimes you just want something that somebody already prepared for you, thinking that okay, this will be a good experience for many people, maybe not for all the people, and that's where you go for some distro that is a little bit more, I don't know, like user friendly in that sense. Even though, of course, you can still say like, okay, I like your nice distro, but I will not use your UI, or will put something on top, and that's completely fine. But this is kind of the same analogy here.
I love it.
Yeah.
I hope I'm not teasing you too much. I feel like I'm teasing you a little more than I normally tease people. Okay. Okay.
I hope I'm not resisting too much.
So we have Headlamp. I'd be interested. There are a couple of things ways we can go from here. Questions I have. One is, I'm curious about how Headlamp fits into these categories of UIs, like generic versus application UIs.
Yeah.
That's one question I have. And then the other question I have is kind of about plugins. Like we've been kind of hitting and dancing around this extensibility, and I want to dig into that. So those are the two questions I have right now. I'll let you choose where to take it from here.
I mean, the first one was very quick, so it's a generic UI, but
okay.
And the but comes with the next question, which is plugins. So is Headlamp a generic UI? Yes, because in the base, in the Headlamp base, so basically any something that anyone using Headlamp will have, and anyone that is building on top of Headlamp will have by default, it's a generic UI. You're gonna see the list of resources, and you're gonna see the what to expect, basically what we wrote there. A list of resources, you can see in detail each resource. You can edit if you have permissions to edit. Yes, and the but now comes that you can, of course, extend it to make it more application focused.
Fun.
You see, because now that's where we enter the we enter the concept of accessibility with plugins. So yeah, so if you want to have it like, okay, I like that it's generic, or maybe even like, okay, I'd like to show workloads, but anything else should not be shown, and I want to put my application focused UI in there that I just built. You can do that with a plugin, right? The plugin can say, I only want to show only these things from the base, right? And I want to add a new tab right here, or a new, I don't know, sidebar link or something like that. And when users click it, there's a new whole UI in the center that can show you, I don't know, a completely different user experience there.
So we segued perfectly into plugins.
Yes.
So I have one quick question before I let this go away, and that is, when we talked about application-focused UIs, we talked about lots of applications, focused on lots of applications and their interactions versus focused on a single application and its behavior. Right. Can you go either way with the plugins?
Yes, with the plugins, like I said, Headlamp itself is a generic UI, so you will have that unless you make a plugin that changes that. Right? And so let's say, again, you say, I just want to show pods. There's something with pods. The rest is not even, the user will not notice it. So you can remove those things that you don't want. And then you can add, for example, an application focused UI that is about, I don't know, your delivery platform in your own Kubernetes flavor. Or maybe it's something really about an application that you're running, so you want to make sure that you have certain things in that. I don't know. We can think of examples, but there will be something that plugins can do.
So you're saying plugins are so versatile, you could do whatever you want in terms of whether you're focused on an application.
And we get into plugins now. So what are these plugins? The plugins, we also call it front-end plugins, because they are JavaScript. So we didn't get into that, but we probably could talk about the technology. But Headlamp has a backend and a front end, right? The front end is of course, I guess, a very important part, because in the end we're talking about a user interface. The plugins are JavaScript bundles that change the front end.
Okay.
So there's a backend and a front end.
Are plugins considered to be backend themselves?
No, so they are. I can say how they are delivered, but they are definitely front end related.
Okay. Would the backend be akin to like Headlamp base, where it's kind of like, this is the foundation that's not changeable?
No,
or
so
it is change. No. How it's expressed is changeable. Has a backend.
So it has the backend and the front end. This is something very common, I guess, to many web applications.
Okay.
with a UI. That's why sometimes I kind of overlook when I talk about it. That's
Okay.
the thing about sometimes being so I guess deep in the project. But yeah, so there is a backend and the front end. The backend is where I guess the communication with the clusters and the servers that are serving those clusters is done. And the front end is, of course, the UI with which the users interact.
Okay. So a headlamp plugin is a bundle of JavaScript.
Is JavaScript that is loaded and runs in the front.
Is JavaScript that is loaded and run where?
In the front end.
Okay. So do you have to know JavaScript to make your own?
That is convenient, yes.
Okay. I have I have like a distinction that I maybe like to talk about, because
sure.
I'm interested in so basically you've talked, when we were talking about the application focused UIs, you gave an example of like, okay, when you're making your own plugin, you can take this away, you can add this. But also the app catalog and the Prometheus plugin are showing me too that third-party plugins might be a part of it too. Is that correct? Yes.
Third party in the sense that they use external projects. Is that what you mean?
Okay. I guess so. My question is, do you build your own plugins 100% of the time, or are you likely to use some plugins that already exist that integrate third-party tools?
Yes. So one way to reply that is that we have plugins that we built, and of course the idea with the whole being an open source project that you can extend is that others can build also plugins. Right now, those two plugins that we are using, they were built by us, but of course there are other examples of plugins that were built by other people for their own use cases. For example, you can find it on GitHub that Orange, this big telecommunication company, they have a plugin for Headlamp that they have in their GitHub to control, I guess, something in their own deployment around Kubernetes. There's another big consultancy company called EPAM, and they also have their own delivery platform. So they created a plugin for Headlamp that is actually probably one of the most complex examples of plugins we have. They have a whole UI for controlling that delivery platform. So it's not so much that okay, the Prometheus plugin was done by the Prometheus folks. Of course, if there are projects out there that want to have a UI on top of a generic UI for Kubernetes, that's something that we do support and we do encourage people to do. But the idea is that, of course, when you want to deliver your own user experience around Kubernetes, right, and that can mean a million different things, you have already a base that will give you, again, a generic UI that probably you need anyway when you talk about Kubernetes. And then on top of that, you do your own thing. It can be an application-specific UI. It can be, just a more opinionated way of rearranging, I don't know, how the pods look in terms of, in comparison with other things. It can be a million things.
So what are some examples of plugins that are built and maintained by the Headlamp project?
Yeah, so those are those the ones that we mentioned before. Those are two examples. There is also we also have, for example, one of the plugins that we are very that is in a very almost finished state right now is actually a plugin catalog plugin. What does this mean? it's so, and now we're getting into a different kind of part of the project, but it's like, which is the delivery of plugins, right?
Yeah.
How do you deliver plugins? Right now, we've been focused on
Wait,
plugins. Yes.
I'm not ready to move ahead to that yet.
Okay.
I'm still stuck on so there's some plugins that are built by the project, and it sounds like most plugins are built by users. Is that correct?
I wouldn't be able to tell you a number. I guess because there are companies out there that make their own plugins for Headlamp, and then we have also our official repo of plugins that are basically plugins that we did. It's, even though the project has been around for a while, it's still I guess the focus has been on giving this platform that people can build on top, and not so much in having this ecosystem of plugins. But that's something that we are actually now getting to. Right? So because that's kind of the next step. Right now, we've been focused on, without trying to deviate from where we were, but the idea has been, okay, here's something that you can use and you can extend for your own issues that you want to solve. Rather than say, okay, come to us and deliver your own plugin to our users, right? But now we're also working on a way to do that. So yeah.
So is there such a thing? Does Headlamp have the popularity for like other third-party tools to make and maintain their own plugins for Headlamp?
If they have what? Sorry.
Would it be common, or does Headlamp have the momentum as a project yet for other third-party tools to build and maintain their own Headlamp plugin?
Yeah, so the momentum and the popularity, that will be something that that I'm not sure.
Not quite there yet.
I can judge. No, like if I say it's not quite there yet, what does that mean? Does that mean that the system is still immature or it's not stable? That's not the case, right?
Okay.
But it's definitely the case that that we have external companies, external to the project, building solutions on top of Headlamp, right? And and like I said, Orange, for example, and EPAM, they have their own plugin, and they use them internally. We also know of examples of companies that deploy it internally to their own Kubernetes users. So with their own changes, and that can be like in how Headlamp is delivered or how Headlamp looks like in a couple of things with the plugins, but that's basically it. And right now, that's a big push we're doing is for having as much as many projects or CNCF projects, I guess, have a Headlamp plugin as possible. That comes, of course, with promotion and a bit of effort.
Yeah, and ideally the projects would maintain their own plugin, right? Or would it be Headlamp that maintains that project? The projects would. Okay.
Right. So yeah, and now we're getting to that. Also touches the topic of yes.
Don't move forward yet. Before you mentioned a couple times this company Orange built its own plugin, but can you give me like a more like discrete, small example of a type of plugin that anybody would build? Like a plugin
anybody would build,
like that, like provides visibility for a certain application, like that plugin.
Yeah, so I mentioned, for example,
what's an example of a plugin itself?
Yeah, so the example that I gave with EPAM that I'm very familiar with, because I interacted with the developers in our Slack channel, is for example a UI for their delivery platform. That's
okay.
That's what I understand from. I'm not a user of their platform. This is what I understand from their plugin, of course. So they have their own delivery platform. I think they use custom resources. I don't know. I don't know the specifics of what the platform itself does, but of course, then it's like how do you have a UI that or a way for users to interact with this delivery platform that is hopefully intuitive and I guess we'll show you the different options you got. How do you translate that to a UI? Of course, you can bootstrap your own thing. You can choose how to do it, or you can make a plugin for Headlamp because it's if it's going to interact with a Kubernetes cluster, then you have all you need right now. You have a UI that will list you the clusters. Once you get into the cluster, it will list the pods and all these things. And maybe you want something completely different, but still you want to interact with the cluster. You want to go there and list your custom resources and display, make a UI for your custom resources. A specific UI, so people do not have to, for example, edit the YAML. Instead of editing the YAML to do something that will trigger, I don't know, something specific to the way those custom resources work. Maybe you want to have a button, and you click the button, and it does everything in the background. So this is one of the very, I guess, basic examples or motivation on why you would use Headlamp and a plugin, or develop a plugin for Headlamp.
So great. This is very helpful. And so I understand better plugins. I understand, and I'll find a place on the board that, like, with the plugin system, like your UI for your Kubernetes is wildly customizable to your exact experience that you want, which is pretty cool. And then one thing you were going to talk about that I didn't let you talk about yet was the app catalog. What did you call it?
I was giving you an example of
plugin.
I was giving you an example of a plugin that we are now finishing, and that has to do with the delivery of plugins. How do you deliver plugins, right?
Okay.
And now it's me like saying that before we go there, you wrote in there 2 types of plugins. I would, and then you have like 3 examples, but I would say
because this one doesn't quite exist yet.
That's fine, but I would say they're not 2 types of plugins. So the plugins that we build and maintain, they use the same system exactly that plugins that other folks would use, right? It's just that we did them. And actually, the idea is that we do more and more that are plugins rather than changes to the core. Because of that, like if you want to do something that is more opinionated, not generic, not for everybody, that's a plugin, right? So it's not really 2 types of plugins. There's maybe 2 examples of plugins.
2 flavors.
But yeah, technically, there's nothing different. It's just the authors, and we have our own repo. You can have a million repos. You can have, it's just going to use the same system.
Okay. Does 2 flavors of plugins help? Does that sound better than types?
I would, but to I don't know. It's not really because they don't differ technically, right? So it's
2
like
origins.
Origin, yes, there you go.
2 origins of plugins, and eventually a 3rd one. So
yeah,
how do we deliver plugins? Is that where you wanted to go next?
Yes, that's the thing we are working on right now. Actually, about to be released. But so right now, the way you deliver plugins, it has been focused on you also deliver Headlamp, meaning that okay, you get Headlamp. You want to create your own plugin for a UI for your own delivery system, custom resource-based system, something like that. Then you create that plugin, and now you deploy Headlamp with your own plugin. So you can deploy Headlamp as it is from the Helm chart, for example, and this plugin, and you give it to your users, right? We may know about the plugin because you post it on GitHub, or we may not know about it, and that's it. Because this is a very specific use case. It's like, okay, I have my own service and I'm giving you a service, right? So the plugin
Yep.
is powering a service.
Mhm.
We have, but then we have another type of user. So in this case, the user is someone that uses Headlamp on their desktop to interact with the clusters, whatever they are. And the idea here is that maybe they want, maybe there are tools out there that have specific UIs for them,
Uh-huh.
and you would like to install them without necessarily having to download
Ah.
Headlamp or
Yeah.
whatever we're calling it now, with a different flavor of Headlamp with that specific
Uh-huh.
plugin, right? So
Uh-huh.
how do you, basically the question is, how do you, as a user, how do you install plugins from
Yeah.
other sources, right? And this is what we are working on. We have now, we have to have a way that is like a central point to list plugins from. And that for that we have chosen Artifact Hub.
Okay.
So Artifact Hub,
But
yes.
I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. And that is, so plugins, maybe you want them to be a part of the Headlamp install itself. Like if you're using Headlamp across your organization and you want this basic level of plugins as part of your particular Headlamp distro. But then, so you want plugins there, but then you also, as a user, might want some plugins to customize your very personal one user experience. And you might want to add plugins there. Okay, I just wanted to repeat that.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. So those are two types. One type is like I, as a vendor, I'm giving you this service. That's Headlamp with modifications. Modifications come from plugins, the plugins that I or somebody else developed, and I'm giving you this. Right? It's a full bundle. So it's bundled with Headlamp, right? And then the other case is you are an individual user that you are using Headlamp. Are there any plugins out there that can help you with your day-to-day cluster management, right?
Okay, bundled with Headlamp plugins.
Yeah, distributed, I guess, or
Plugins.
installed by the user itself would be. So bundled with
Plugins.
Headlamp means that it's shipped with Headlamp. Plugins and individual
User ads.
There you go.
Yeah. Cool.
Right. And yes, and in this case, it's like, okay, what does this mean? Like, do you go and do a search on the internet to find plugins? Well, maybe that's not the most convenient or secure way. Do you only use plugins that come from Headlamp's repos, which is by us? Well, that's kind of that's convenient, but it's probably limited or limiting. Right? So we needed a place for people to add. We needed kind of a repository of plugins, right? But one that could be contributed to by different users or developers. So yes, the discoverability, exactly. It's Friday. So
no, it's great, and I think it's great not to assume that everyone knows what discoverability is. So
that's exactly what that's exactly the word that I should have mentioned. So yes, so that place that we've chosen is Artifact Hub. Because basically it ticks all the boxes that we had. Artifact Hub, if some people watching don't know, it's exactly that. It's a place to discover different cloud native or to discover repositories of cloud native tools. That's a maybe a rough, quick, hopefully not a wrong description. But they have several types of I guess applications in there or packages. Yes, several types of packages. So now they have a Headlamp type of package, Headlamp plugin.
Oh,
type of
nice.
package.
So users can share their custom built plugins. Wow.
Yes, as in Artifact Hub, as Artifact Hub packages.
Okay. So Headlamp packages, they're Headlamp specific package.
They are Headlamp plugins that have their own format in Artifact Hub, and basically in a technical way, what they are JavaScript bundles. But we have the tools to generate those, right? We have a tool that you write we have the API, we have a tool that to start the plugin, to build a plugin, so basically to assist the developers with writing the plugin. Once you have the plugin, for distributing it, you have to make sure that Artifact Hub knows about it. And that's and so that means basically adding your plugin as a package, as a Headlamp plugin in Artifact Hub.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now the missing part is, okay, so now things are on Artifact Hub. How do we make sure that they are showing on Headlamp? Does Headlamp now import those plugins from Artifact Hub? And the answer is Headlamp base does not do that. Okay, that would be, again, something opinionated. We're telling you that you want to install plugins as a user. Maybe you don't, because maybe you're hosting Headlamp, out there, and you don't want people installing plugins on that system.
Yeah.
Right. But if you are a desktop user, that means that you install Headlamp in your machine. You're in control, and maybe you want to find out what's out there for your to make your life easier in the cluster, managing the cluster, right? So how do we solve this issue? We solve it by having a new plugin called a plugin catalog plugin. And this plugin, yes, plugin catalog plugin.
Okay. Cool. Awesome.
Yeah. So this plugin does what I've been building up to, which is basically it checks Artifact Hub and says, hey, here's a list of the plugins that Artifact Hub is listing, and then you are able as a user to click one, install it, and then once you install it, the UI reloads, loading that plugin, and that's it. You see whatever the plugin does in your.
So the plugin catalog plugin makes the plugins both discoverable and install. You can install it with
and it installs it, yes, if you
Okay. Cool. Awesome.
Yeah. So this maybe an important topic here is, okay, but if you ship this plugin catalog plugin, which will list plugins and allow the user to install, and you're telling me that you're putting it in Headlamp, and Headlamp works in both desktop and web, but you said that maybe this is just for the desktop users. How can you make sure? How do you make sure that this is possible? Do you have two builds that are different? And the answer is that plugins, of course, can choose to do certain capabilities depending on whether they are running or whether Headlamp is running as a web service or as a desktop application. So
how am I doing for this much space for all we have left to talk about? Am I on track? Or
I think it's fine. I think depends on how much we go into.
So we have Headlamp web versus desktop.
Yes.
And
And
plugins
depending,
can be for one or the other or both. Is that what
yes,
I'm hearing?
yes,
Okay. Or yeah,
that's a good
none,
summary.
but that would, but yeah. Plugins can be for one or both. And also you offer tools to help you build and compile plugins. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. And soon it's also going to publish if you want the plugin.
Okay.
Yeah. And that tool, in a
Uh-huh.
very boring way, it's called Headlamp plugin.
It's called Headlamp plugin, or
Headlamp
it's
dash
called
plugin.
Headlamp.
Headlamp plugin.
Cool. Cool. I'm going to write publish on here, even though it sounds like it's not quite there yet.
That part is not done, so
No, build
build and package. I guess it's probably more.
build, package, and soon publish. And publish coming soon.
Yeah, I don't know how important it is to leave it there.
Okay, I'll just leave it there.
But yeah, what it does is that.
Cool.
Yeah, but it helps to create, build, package. Yes, but it's implied, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, because build is like more of like building a container image, not like actually create. Okay, I'm gonna put create because
Create is like bootstrap, right? It's like how do you start? That's usually the question on any project that you start. How do you start, right? And sometimes you have to start from really scratch, and it's complicated. Other times you have already some boilerplate that is added for you. So create, build, package, I guess, summarizes it.
Cool.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So I think this covered a lot of things, sometimes in more depth than I expected us to go through. I think that as part of the, we covered basically a lot of things. I think many questions that I usually get, if you want me to go there, is also like, how do you, we already kind of covered a little bit, like we talked about web and desktop. So how do you run Headlamp? What permissions do you need for Headlamp to run?
Okay.
And that's usually a concern that people deploying Headlamp in cluster have. So, but this is a whole different topic. That's why I was saying that. Not sure if that's where you want to go.
Is this? Are we closing it out with this question? If we,
I maybe 2 or 3 quick topics.
would you like? Okay, 2 or 3 big topics.
Quick topics, not big.
Oh, okay. That's good. So instead of me writing the question, which takes more real estate, I'll just write the answer.
Right. So the Headlamp does not expect you is not expected to run with any permissions for the cluster. It uses RBAC, meaning that it uses whatever the user's permission is to display whatever the user can do.
So Headlamp, there are a couple of questions here. Like Headlamp itself having cluster permissions and users of the Headlamp and what they're able to access with permissions. And we're talking about Headlamp itself.
Yeah. So I guess the quick note is it uses RBAC, which means users permissions. It does not require any permissions by itself.
Okay, uses RBAC to give its users role-based access control.
Exactly.
To give users access to whatever, to grant access to users.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if that means or if that already implies that it does not require any permissions in itself. Because what I'm saying is that sometimes maybe you have projects that require you to have access to to pods, right, or to have access to logs for things to make sense in the UI,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't require. So yes, exactly.
Great.
So now, if we don't require that, but we still have a UI that, for example, allows you to edit or delete pods or execute
Uh-huh.
pods and all that, how do we do? Like, and the answer is what we call an adaptable UI. So
Okay.
we try to understand exactly what you as a user can do in the cluster. And this means if you don't have the permissions to delete pods
Mm-hmm.
in the namespace that we are seeing the pods now, then we don't show the delete button,
Oh.
right? Because that makes no sense, right? Why would we show a delete button if you click the delete button? It says, yeah, something went wrong. You don't have the permissions, right?
Uh-huh.
This means that, for example, in clouds, and this is a quick example. I know there are some clouds that, of course, operators do not have, or users do not have any permissions there. And then when they need to do something that requires more permissions, they ask for an escalation of those permissions. So suddenly they're granted pod deletion permissions for 10 minutes, right? At that moment,
Mm-hmm.
the UI actually by itself should update, but you can also, of course, manually update. And at that moment, then you start seeing the delete button. That's the idea that or that's the philosophy behind as much as we can do in Headlamp UI. That goes for the edit button. If you cannot edit a pod, many clouds do not allow that, or many deployments do not allow that. Then you don't see an edit button, you see a view button. So
Okay.
that's basically the idea.
No edit button if user can't edit.
Exactly.
Okay. Cool. I'm listening.
Yeah, I was thinking what else we can cover. Already talked about the web versus desktop. When I say desktop, it's of course I guess the three major platforms. That's Linux and Windows and Mac. What else? It's a CNCF sandbox project. That's also something I often forget to mention from the very introduction, but for many people it's important. And we can talk about, for example, community. So and also kind of touches the philosophy that we have behind maintaining the project and specifically the plugins. So
Okay.
yeah, when I worked in a couple of other projects before to understand how should I say how pitfally is a plugin system can be. Yeah, and I'm not saying that allows me to make all the right calls, but one of the things that we often have to choose is like, okay, do we allow plugins to do a lot of things, or we allow them to just tell us the color of the button, right? And that's it. our philosophy is that
Yeah.
we cannot possibly maintain so many options that would be nice for everybody. So we don't say, tell us the color of the button. We say, here's the space for you to put a button or a string or whatever you want, right?
Okay.
So that's the philosophy. However, if we want to, sometimes we don't know, okay, do users actually need to place buttons or modify this part of the UI? Maybe not, or maybe we haven't done it yet. So we don't allow you to modify everything. Why not? Because this would mean that we have to maintain, in order to not break plugins, right, which are built outside of Headlamp. We would have to maintain that added canon, right? And so what we do is that, okay, we started by having a small set that you could modify. And as the users come to us and say, hey, actually, I would like to place a button not in there, but on this place that you never thought I wanted. And that's when we start opening possibilities, right? So the community engagement is something that we really value, and it's something that we have some users on our Slack. They come to us with questions, but sometimes with use cases. Hey, here's this thing. Why can I not modify this? And maybe that requires some debate, or maybe that's a matter of, okay, now we can open this possibility for plugins. So there's that. We also always happy to talk to users, being them like individual users or companies that are building on top of Headlamp, and to help them accomplish what they need.
So the point so community is very important. I guess, like, you're kind of talking about the problem of, if it's this customizable, how can we make everyone happy? And also, how can we make changes without breaking what's already been built on top of Headlamp? So what's the solution to that problem?
Yeah. So, well, of course, the solution when we do that is to have versioning, and also everything is managed from this Headlamp plugin. And when I say everything, I mean when you build a plugin, that plugin, when you build like the source code and actually get a plugin, that's built with this tool called Headlamp plugin. This tool is also, in the past, we had one case not so long ago where we actually incremented our UI library. We incremented we started using a new version, basically. This new version required a lot of changes, as it was not backwards compatible. And so what we did in that case was like, okay, there's no way that we can make maintain backwards compatibility with everything. So what we did there was to make sure that Headlamp plugin ran through your plugin the next time you update the Headlamp plugin version. It runs through your plugin and tells you, okay, listen, you're gonna need to use this new version, and I can help you modify the source code. And so it can do that. Modifies with, I guess, in many cases that's just what's needed. It modifies the source code to this new version, and then you get your plugin up to date with hopefully minimal effort. And of course, when we do this, if we still try to load your old-fashioned plugin, things would break. So we also make sure that okay, in this new version of Headlamp, you have to have built your plugins using Headlamp plugin version X, right? And if not, we say this is not compatible with the current Headlamp. So it's by making sure that you have the versioning right in the plugins, and by making sure that we make this Headlamp plugin tool as convenient as possible for developers.
That's wise. That's great. Okay, I think if you're ready, I think it's time for me to recap everything you've taught me this last hour 15 and see how well we did. I'll check in every once in a while to make sure I have everything correct, but also feel free to interrupt me if I have something wrong. So at the beginning of the conversation, we talked about the world before Headlamp, and in a very diplomatic way, we said the problems were like that UIs for Kubernetes tend to be focused on one particular aspect of Kubernetes, and they tended to be difficult to customize if you wanted to use them for something more. But really, to give full context for Headlamp, we needed to also discuss what is a UI for Kubernetes at all. What does that mean?
Mhm.
So UI stands for user interface, and kubectl or kube control is the most widely used interface, a CLI. But we have generic UIs, but besides kube control, we have UIs fall into two categories: generic UIs and application-focused UIs. So generic UIs, they show cluster level information. So you could like list Kubernetes resources. You might describe Kubernetes resources. You'll manage your resources from there. So you're actually taking action on these resources instead of just viewing them. And then for application-focused UIs, that we could split those into two groups. They might be focused on all of your applications and how they interact with each other, or they could be focused on one specific application. So that really helps give context to the before Headlamp problem too. That like that you may want your UI for any combination of these things, and so it's hard to build one solution that gives everyone what they want. But Headlamp has tried their best to do that, and they do it through plugins. But first, let's say what it is. Headlamp is a UI for Kubernetes that tries to give you the best user experience and builds on top of a shared and extensible platform. And it's a CNCF sandbox project. So basically, Headlamp is a customizable UI. It gives you a base platform, Headlamp base, and then it gives plugins on top of that, which we'll get into later. So there's Headlamp base, has the base platform, has everything that is core, and with it you can get resources, list Kubernetes resources, exec into pods, you can see logs, that sort of base level stuff. Then regular Headlamp has two plugins already bundled with it that are really important plugins that most people are probably going to want. And one is the plugin for app catalog to give you help charts to help you install other plugins. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. And then the other one is a plugin for Prometheus that'll show you your Kubernetes metrics over time. So those are the two. You can get Headlamp base if you, for some reason, you really want to customize it from the ground up, or you can have Headlamp with the bare minimum. But Headlamp, the idea is it's a generic UI. So generic in the sense of it shows all the cluster level information that we talked about before. But you can extend it with these plugins to do these more application focused things. And whether it's interactions between applications or specific application performance, that is something that is fully customizable by you. So plugins, this whole plugin system makes your Headlamp UI wildly customizable to do whatever you wanted to do for your specific organization. And I'll jump ahead a little bit and talk about these plugins that can happen at two levels. So when I say it's wildly customizable for your organization, it is, but it's also customizable for you as a user. So some of these plugins, if you're distributing Headlamp throughout your organization, you can design what you want your Headlamp to look like with plugins, and then use that as part of your particular Headlamp distribution for your organization. But then as a user, you might want to add a user level, like additional plugins that affect only your personal user experience. So plugins happen at these two levels. So when I say wildly customizable, it's exponentially so. So then we talked about Headlamp has a back end and a front end. So let me check in and how are we doing so far? Everything's good?
Yeah, it's a good summary, yes.
Okay, great. Headlamp has a back end and a front end. So a Headlamp plugin is JavaScript that's loaded into the front end. So the two origins of plugins, some of are built and maintained by the Headlamp project, and then these two that ship for Prometheus and App Catalog would be examples. Some are built by and maintained by users themselves, and they can be used in combination from each other. So one example might be a company that's building its own internal developer platform, and they want a UI for their platform, and they can use Headlamp for that. And then we talked about an eventual future where maybe other CNCF projects will build plugins too for the ecosystem for their particular tools. And then we talked about plugin delivery. So we talked about already we summarized the 2 levels of plugins. They might happen at the org level or at the user level. And then plugins are discoverable through a public repository called Artifact Hub. So users can share their plugins here. It's public, it's for everyone. Now you as an organization can control whether or not your users are able to discover plugins. So maybe you want to disable that feature and not let them see plugins. So you have, there's a plugin catalog plugin that makes it so different plugins are discoverable and can be added by your users. So they're not only they're discoverable, but the plugin catalog plugin helps you install plugins.
Just to make sure that that is correct. What I tried to convey.
Okay.
So the plugin catalog plugin is the plugin that will allow you to discover the plugins. So it will list them for you, and it will allow to install it for you as well. This is only for the desktop version, and it's a plugin.
Okay.
But so Headlamp doesn't know anything about Artifact Hub or anything about that in itself. Okay. By default, it doesn't know anything about that, so you don't. It's not like you have to disable that for your users, right?
Okay.
Of course, if you tell those users go ahead and download Headlamp Desktop, then of course, not right now. Like I said, the plugin catalog plugin is being in the very latest stages. It's being finished in the very last stages. But if we assume that it's out, or that it will be out very soon, it's not like if you tell people, okay, go ahead and download Headlamp and install it, then if they install it in their desktop machine, they're gonna be able to see that plugin catalog, choose the plugins to install in their machines, right? But if you are saying, okay, I'm gonna modify Headlamp, and deliver it based on what they have for the web or something, you don't even have to disable that because that's not in there. That's not going to be in there.
That's a great point.
So the plugin catalog adds in instead of enables, right? It's something that will bring you this value, but if you don't have it, you don't have it at all.
Okay, that's great. So because of that, I added, by default, Headlamp doesn't know about Artifact Hub. Right. And then you use the plugin catalog plugin if you want your particular Headlamp to be able to discover plugins and discover and install plugins from Artifact Hub.
Yes.
And then this only works for web, you said too, right? The plugin catalog plugin is only for desktop. Desktop. And then, so that brings us to Headlamp Web versus Headlamp Desktop. So when you, as a user, if you're creating plugins, you can create your plugin for web or for desktop or for both. But regardless, Headlamp offers a tool, and the tool is called Headlamp-plugin, that helps users create, build, and package their own plugins to be able to be distributed on Artifact Hub. And then a couple more fun stuff about Headlamp. Headlamp uses RBAC to grant access to users, but Headlamp itself doesn't need any special permissions to run. Headlamp has an adaptable UI, so it tries to understand and expose exactly what the user can do, nothing less and nothing more. So there, for example, if a user cannot edit a resource, there's no button that says edit. So they, and then you said community input is very important and it's appreciated. And I put headlamp.dev if you want to go. You can find the blog, you can find the docs, you can find where to go to Slack to interact with the community, all from that place. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. That's
a good summary.
awesome. Yeah. We have a comment that says, "Show me the UI." There's a strict rule to show that there's no screen sharing. That's part of the what makes this show a strange and exciting show. So, but if you go to headlamp.dev, you'll be able to see examples of the Headlamp UI there. So it's just a quick browser jump away. I wanted to say right here for desktop. That was, the last thing I wanted to add. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we say goodbye?
I don't know. I feel like there's always topics we can cover. But I think, but I think the idea was to give a somewhat in-depth view. We didn't get into like languages or the tech stack or anything like that. But I guess that's also not super important. At least you're not going to be surprised. I think
we have a couple of questions coming into chat right now from a LinkedIn user.
All right.
How does this, well, they're mentioning a technology called Lens and asking, how does this compare to Lens? What is Lens?
So Lens is another UI from Morantis right now. It's it's as far as I understand, it's for desktop. So there's a difference in there. And I'm not sure if they are open source right now or not. So that would have to be checked. It's been a while since I checked that, but you can check that part. I'm not sure. Like I said, I read. I read about it, and in our case, of course, we like being a CNCF project and being 100% open source. We got that, and it's also web and desktop. So, as far as features go, I'm sure that they have things that maybe we don't have, or maybe we have things that they don't have. I cannot give you like a comprehensive list right now. Yeah.
So they're just desktop, and Headlamp is web and desktop. And
last time I checked, I'm not sure if they changed that or not, right?
And then Headlamp is 100% open source, which I think maybe answers the next question, which is, what is the cost of Headlamp?
No, the cost is not. It's not to us. The cost. So it's like I said, it's 100% open source. We're happy to to work in it, and that it's our jobs to work in it. I think we're very lucky as developers to be in that position. But there is no cost. There's no model of it's open source, but if you want to do this and that, that's the paid version. We don't have any of that.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, this has been a joy. Thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise today.
Yeah.
I'm going to. What's that?
It was fun. I just had it.
Oh, good. I'm glad you liked it. I'm very glad. So I'm playing the music. There we go. So goodbye to everyone who asked questions and those who said hi in the chat. Epic Tralala for seeing the whole time. Thank you for sharing your time in there. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you. And thanks to everyone too who watches the recording.
Yeah,
I appreciate
thanks, everybody.
you.
Goodbye.
Bye.